thing I'm trying to get across is that I just went to a project that I didn't really want to do, started working with these kids. This magical thing happened. We made this movie. It was actually in some film festivals. And it was that moment that I just realized the power of working with others.
What if instead of making your art by yourself, you made it with hundreds of people? What if you could invite anyone to participate? And most importantly, what if the outcome was deliciously uncertain? Meet Kyle Johnson. He's a California-based artist who over the past 20 years has taken his drawing and sculpture to an extraordinary level of collaboration. Using cardboard, glue guns, and a whole mashup of materials, Kyle has led the creation of homemade rocket ships, airplanes, robots, and a whole host of imagined worlds for groups at schools, institutions, and creative symposiums. Whether his art is made in his studio, which is a really cool converted church in Central California, or taken on the road to collaborate with others, its ethos is simple. Kyle is here to make things, to live a creative life, or rather play a creative life. And if willing, you are invited. His enthusiasm and generosity of spirit, they're just so big. It seems to have overflown into everything, especially his art. After listening today and seeing Kyle's art, you're never going to see a piece of cardboard quite the same way. So make sure while we're talking, you check out Kyle's amazing art collaborations and personal art. Just go to arttolife.com and click on podcasts. You'll find everything there. Okay, let's dive into this conversation with Kyle now. He's talking to me from his studio, one created from a church built in the 1800s. Let's go. Welcome to Art to Life, a podcast for the creatively curious. My name is Nicholas Wilton, and each week I'll help you rediscover not just the art of your life, but the art in your life. Join me as we explore that perfect blue at twilight, the wild frontiers of art making, and the extraordinary joy of finding your way as you go. Kyle, listen, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. It's super, super appreciated. Can't wait to dive into all what you're making.
Sure, happy to be here.
I love what you're doing. And I'm just curious, just the way the big thing that shouts out at me is just the collaboration that you're so involved in. It's so integral to your work.
Sure.
And I mean, there's so many things I want to talk to you about, but that just hit me really big when I was on your site and looking at all the things you're making. You like to work in collaboration with people. Has that always been the case?
Yeah, I wouldn't say always, but I have kind of discovered that over the last, 20 years of trying to carve out an art career, it kind of went in three different ways. And one was the solitary, make work for the galleries, do the type of stuff that you're going to do if nobody cared about you anyway, And then the second one was not maybe, but it was commercial projects. Working with production designers and friends that were directing commercials to build weird things. And then the third, and probably what I get more, good feelings from is, collaborations, giant projects where I'm getting a lot of people who maybe normally wouldn't be creative. Although I love working with, art students or people that already consider themselves makers. I get a kick out of showing up at like a corporate thing or a thing where students from all over the university can participate, where people, normally don't have scissors and glue and markers and stuff in front of them. And maybe think, I let go of that when I was younger, but they get to dive in and within 10 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour are completely transformed, their brain is going off in different directions they never expected. And we're all building something together. That's kind of the important thing behind my collaborations is while I do a mask workshop and while I like to build costumes and stuff, what I really like to do is kind of come up with a concept, get everybody working on elements to that larger project, So there's something, I could give you an example of one of them. Like I recently built a full-sized Conestoga wagon or a prairie schooner with 180 students in 5 days. And kind of the idea was, what would you take with you if you're leaving your family on the East Coast, you're heading out West to start a new life? What's the one thing you would bring with you? Build that and then throw it in the wagon. And so people got into it. Somebody might just make a tiny little thing. Somebody might make a big thing, and I could go on and on about those projects, but I love engaging people to work together.
Yeah, I was recently at a kind of like, 1 day intensive where I was talking to this guy about all the things I'm doing in Art to Life, which is, it's my painting, it's teaching. And they were like, what is the one thing that you don't, that's super important, that forget about whether, it's the most profitable or whatever. And it's these workshops that I started doing years ago, just with, just showing up. I would bring all the art supplies, and what can happen in 4 or 5 days. And I just absolutely love it. And I still do them. It's the whole thing for me. So I completely get it, and everyone gets to know each other. And some people have done art before. Some people haven't.
That's a very good point when you say people get to know each other. I grew up with a mom and a grandmother who were always quilting, around a table, quilting groups. So I kind of grew up seeing this, it was always women, but I just grew up with this, group of women all working on the same thing, chatting and talking. And that I try to get that. I try to tell people I'm after that quilting bee mentality, where we're all around a table working on something. If we were at a bar, we'd be talking about something. If we went on a hike, we'd have one conversation. If we were sitting in your family room or right here on Zoom. But if you and I sat down with some scissors and glue, we would have a whole different conversation throughout the day. And it's not that it's not that it's a better conversation, but it's just a different kind of bonding that I really enjoy.
Yeah. Making art with friends. That's how I describe it. And it's the backbone of I've had so many fun. And I like going to new places because, people see different things and they put things together. You're just mixing it up,
Yeah, that's another good point, is the travel aspect. I've been all around the world, literally, a couple of times, specifically with the TED organization or with different schools and, universities that have invited me, but it's just, just making stuff with people. It's amazing.
So do you come up with like the project idea? Because I love what you just described. You're doing a project, but here's a question. Now you guys answer it in this way. Is that how you kind of work? Will you create that?
I do. While I have done some projects multiple times, I try to just do something new every time. That keeps it fresh for me. And then I don't feel like I'm becoming the Conestoga wagon guy, or, this is the guy that always makes masks with people. So just because I want to make fresh new pieces, I'm always trying to come up with a new concept, and that'll be based on the group that invites me, the history of that area, whatever I'm kind of working on at the time. A lot of times, one project, while I'm doing that project, I realize, or I see something in that project that sparks like, okay, I'm going to do this next time. It's going to be a little different. And an example of that would be with 200 people in Orange County. I built pretty much a full-size airplane.
Oh my God.
And that's on my website too. But, it was great. Everything you'd expect this like airplane had, except for when it came to the cockpit. I just kept telling people, we want gauges and dials and buttons and levers and switches and they would pile it up on this table. And then I slowly would build the composition of this cockpit. And I realized there that the energy was in the cockpit. Like people, there was always somebody that was like, I want to work on the wing, or I'll work on the propeller, or I'll work on the engine compartment. But really what people were having the most fun at and where their creativity was coming out was the cockpit. So then I told myself, the next time I get asked to do something like this, I'm going to pitch this like giant cockpit, like a B-2 bomber or like the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah.
And so I did. I showed up at another arts high school a year later, and I built this giant, like a cockpit to an airplane that would have 4 seats. And we just, with about 300 kids, we just built all, there was gauges monitoring every aspect of their lives. There was just, I can't even remember, some of the good ones right now, but there was just a lot of beautiful things happening, and it was all revolving around just creating this cockpit. And then we did a green screen kind of thing in front of it so that they could sit in there. That's another thing, is I try to bring the analog. I'm not the most tech guy, but I have a lot of friends that are. So I try to always, if we're going to build 50 robot suits, then I try to get some friends to help me make a movie. Like if we're going to have all these kids dressed up as cardboard robots, I can't just take a picture and walk away, So There's a video on my site that you may or may not have watched, but it is that. I got invited to build robot suits. Actually, I just got invited to do something with some students. I had just built a robot suit for a Halloween project for myself. I saw it on the floor. I thought, if I take this apart and everybody traces these pieces, they can pretty much be covered in cardboard fairly quickly. And if you're bigger than me, you might have to add a little bit. If you're shorter than me, you might have to cut a little bit off. But for the most part, I'm confident that I can get. This is actually the very first one of these projects that I ever did. It was me. Wow. It was me being nervous, not knowing what I wanted to do with these kids. I had just made this suit. I laid the pieces out. I kind of came up with the idea that I could confidently get these kids covered up in a couple days. And then all of a sudden, this magic thing happened where I had, literally 50 cardboard robots, all unique.
Oh my God.
And then I called some friends at a post-production company and I said, you guys are going to be able to get a portfolio piece out of this. We've got all these robots. This university is willing to, they shut down basketball for the day so we could have the gym for our set.
Oh my God.
And we filmed this, this movie that you could watch on my site. That's kind of like the year 3011 cardboard. It's like robot prom. Is what it is. It's like the prom night for like a robot community. It's really bizarre, but the idea is, the thing I'm trying to get across is that I just went to a project that I didn't really want to do, started working with these kids. This magical thing happened. We made this movie. It was actually it was actually in some film festivals. And it was that moment that I just realized the power of working with others. I've always been a team player, like to do things with other people, but it was that cardboard robot project that I just saw the possibilities of how, you could inspire others, you could make something cool, you could work together, and I learned more from them. And I'm sure you do that too when you do workshops. You learn more from them. Sometimes you leave there thinking like selfishly, like, wow, I got more out of this than they did,
You're using glue sticks and cardboard, right? Like that's what you're using for all these projects.
Yeah, a lot of the projects, I am, let's see, I'm an artist that likes to work in a lot of different materials, but I will say that the last, and there are reasons for this, but the last, 10 years, I've kind of been associated with cardboard pretty hard. And that is one, because I've done a lot of commercial projects with cardboard because you can build things quickly, you can build things cheaply, they can look good on camera, and then, they can shoot their piece and then it can be done. And so I ended up getting hired to do quite a few things, and we could get into that. But then two, I realized that working with cardboard in the beginning, before I did this robot thing, before I was kind of doing a lot of workshops, I got into the material because I realized I was able to build things that looked a lot like my drawings, that had this kind of wonky character to them. The X-Acto knife became the eraser. I could see results really quickly. I could imagine something, I could draw it out on a piece of paper, and within an hour or so, that object could physically be sitting there on my desk. And that is a magic that I love to get across to people is so there was that. But then I just realized, cardboard is everybody's touched it, everybody's folded it, it's cheap, it's ubiquitous, so people of all skill levels, age groups can pretty much dive into these projects where you're manipulating that as the main material, like that airplane had a steel skeleton to it. So did the covered wagon. And I could get into that. I even found, 5 or 6 kids that wanted to learn to weld, and we built the skeleton together. So they learned about welding, and then, but other times, I might, like for the TED organization, I've done their main conference the last 2 years. And this last year I built a giant geodesic sphere. And I built that, on my own in the studio, crimped the conduit, did all the math, and built this giant geodesic sphere. And then I took that apart, and I show up and build the sphere. And then the sphere is sheathed with cardboard. And then it's kind of a world is painted on it. And then I invite everybody to add to the world with me.
Are you painting this cardboard?
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes it gets painted, but not always.
Yeah. So you were saying that it's cardboard's just become... It's just so efficient and quick to realize something, that it's amazing how fast that can happen. And what I love about it is that, and this is what's sort of interesting, it's realistic. I mean, you're making realistic things, but they're out of cardboard. So they're the thing. and people can all make a thing. They all know how to make it, like the cockpit or the plane, but it's sort of not. It's like, but it's more a plane than a plane. That interesting thing. It's sort of, how much of this is it realism? Like, it's so cool. It's like a symbol. It's like a metaphor for the thing.
Yeah, I am just a guy that likes to manifest the objects of his imagination, and those things can come, the objects and the reasons for doing things can come in so many different ways. I out to have this kind of maybe style that you might, that looks real, or I don't know what I'm trying to say. I just draw the way I draw. I just draw things, and I've drawn my whole life. If I had to do one thing for the rest of my life, it would be drawing. But I realized that it was also fun and challenging to kind of build these things. And so I think while I also make abstract drawings, or maybe drawings that are a little more wacky and you don't know exactly what you're looking at, I think I would like to build some of that stuff, but it's maybe just a little challenging, and I haven't figured out exactly how to do it yet with paper.
Yeah.
And that's one reason why I think I took off with cardboard, because I realized that I could just, as quickly as I can draw, because I do draw really fast. I'm confident to tell you that I can draw, just like anything, I can just draw.
Yeah.
It's just it's like you might speak Spanish and English. I speak English and visual, and we all speak a different dialect of visual, but my specific dialect is just one that I've been working on so long. It's nothing I ever set out for, but it lends itself to, when I build things, cardboard just kind of has the same kind of qualities as my drawings. I don't know. I'm not maybe explaining myself very clearly, but it's
no, absolutely. It's just what I love is that, when you draw something, it becomes your own thing, but there's this invitation that you're creating for everybody to like make their own thing. And for many of these people, I imagine some of them have never like made the thing. Like they can picture a plane, they've never made it. And then they make a plane, and it's their plane, and there it is. And everyone knows it's a plane, but it's theirs. And I just think that's kind of, there's this translation thing that's happening.
Yeah. People, everybody, I see the kind of switch in people's brain all click at different moments, where they'll sit down and really be frustrated, or think like, I can't do this. Or I, like at a conference, I'm pretty good about like being the circus barker, where I like pull people in like, oh, come on, well, you look like the perfect person to make we need a spaceship. You look like the perfect person to make a spaceship, or I give people some ideas as they come into it. But I also provide a lot of drawings I never tell anybody what to build, but I also provide, like, for instance, with the Conestoga wagon, the Prairie Schooner project, I drew a bunch of pages of items that might go into a Conestoga wagon to give people ideas, So sometimes they're looking up at my drawings. I'm not really trying to get anybody to make anything in my style, when we're doing these projects. I realize that it's just going to take on a life of its own. And sometimes I get a lot of comments like, how can you just let this project run free? How can you aren't you nervous that it's not going to work out? Or aren't you nervous that it's not going to, and I, there might be a little that every time, but I've done enough of these now that I'm pretty confident usually that we can get somewhere cool with most of my concepts. A few have gone south, but that's the way it is with everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I love that. A big theme, like one of the things that I'm really into is this. I mean, that's how I make art, is this finding your way as you go kind of approach. And I just noticed a lot of artists follow this, but you're doing it with this huge group,
Yeah. While I love doing those projects, I also love just being alone and being in my studio and being that solitary guy, and so while I'm very good at being in front of a group, leading a group, kind of being that art coach or whatever I call it, I'm also equally content just being, alone for a long time. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm not sure I'm the guy that could do that, like 3 or 4 projects like that a year, and I feel fulfilled. It'd be hard for me. I guess what I'm getting at is it is a lot of energy to output, and I'm sure when you do these workshops, your friends might think, oh, you're just standing there with some people doing a workshop, but to keep the energy going, and I try to do like 5 days at it. I like to do, where this all actually started is universities. Universities would start asking me to come do the slide talk and maybe talk with some graduate students. And it's like a 3-hour commitment or something. You go there, and then maybe they take you to dinner. It's a pretty common thing that universities would do. And I started getting on a little circuit where I was being invited to do those, and I was honored. But whatever I started thinking like whatever they offer me as a payment, because they're always different. Every time I would say, how about you guys double that and I'll stay for a couple of days and do something with your students, and that's how it all started. I was just trying to make like a little extra cash, and then one project has led to the next. And, and I kept trying to, up the fee and do bigger projects and push up the ante every time. And it really just came out of this kind of, like I said, I would just get invited to talk.
Yeah.
And I felt like, I could talk. But when I was an art student, I would go to those lectures, but, you just hear the guy or the woman, you hear the artist up there, rambling on. Some are good, some are horrible. But the few that would stick around or go have a beer with us afterwards, or, that you could just kind of get to know on a more human level. Those were always so much more inspirational to me. So I kind of wanted to be that guy, that like, just got in with the young artists. And, I've had made lots of different relationships through those projects where I kept the friendship going, largely due to social media, because you can like, you go there and you link up with a bunch of students and then they get teaching jobs later. And then they want you to remember that experience and they want you to come to their school that they're teaching at. And
I love it. And then all those people, they're not just looking at your art, they're sharing part of the art.
Yeah.
That's your art. That's this big thing that they made. And so it just virally spreads everywhere,
Oh, absolutely. That's another reason why I try to make a video, in your budget, room for me, Doc, kind of about this week, I would be happy to, because one, I just want to do it for my own archiving, but I also realize that I've got, all these students that are going to forward that video out. And the university is going to forward the video out. And it's not just me in the studio. I have an opportunity to, do a project that really gets out there. And some of them have gone out there. And
totally.
My goal throughout my entire art career has just been to have one project at least lead to one other project. If that can happen, then that's a lot. That's creative life,
Absolutely. So Kyle, you just recently bought this church and you're retrofitting a church, and tell me all about that. Cool, man.
Yeah, it is. I'm a big advocate for like chapter flips in life. I haven't done a lot. I'm from Kansas City. I lived in the Midwest, I went to college, and around 22, I left for LA thinking that it was just good for me. If I really wanted to pursue the arts, I needed this chapter flip, and I thought I would go for 5 or 6 years and figure it out. I stayed for 20 and loved LA, lived in weird warehouses, mostly on the east of downtown, and converted. I bought an Airstream trailer that was the same vintage as me, 1975. I renovated it from the tires up and just kind of lived in there, the stereotype of the guy that lives in a trailer, inside of a warehouse. And I just kept saving. And my partner, Nadine, who's a ceramic artist, we'd been seriously thinking about moving in together, but, we had great studios in LA. And the more and more we talked, the more we wanted a compound, the more we felt secure in our connections and contacts in LA that, it might be a good time to do it to, instead of just talking about how fun it would be to live in the country, let's do it, So we looked and looked and looked, and we kept looking about with a 2-hour, 3-hour radius from Los Angeles. And to make a long story short, we ended up finding at right around the 3-hour mark. So we're directly, between San Francisco and Los Angeles, off the 101 near a town called Paso Robles. Just east of Paso Robles, a few minutes, 10 minutes, is a small town called Shandon. And in that town, there is, like maybe 200 houses, a school, a city park, and a Methodist church, this beautiful old white church. And the church was for sale, and it had been for sale for a year before we found it. And whatever, we just jumped on it, made it happen. And so now we, live in the sanctuary is my studio. There's a Sunday school on the property. I'm also kind of a skilled carpenter, woodworker kind of guy.
Uh-huh.
And so I've ripped the roof off of that. I redid both bathrooms, but right now the roof is ripped off the Sunday school, and that's going to be, we're going to give it a slant to accept solar and be better for, water drainage. And, that's going to be the master bedroom and Nadine's offices. And then we've got a house on the property that's like the old parsonage where the pastor would have stayed.
Oh my God.
And that is Nadine's studio. And that's a bit of a wreck, that building. But the church is in amazing condition. It was It was established as a church in 1885 or something like that, and then burned in 1985, 100 years later. And then they rebuilt it in the late 80s, exactly as it looked in 1880, but with thicker walls and insulation and new electrical and an air conditioner. And, so it's really like this beautiful old building that's not that old. It's only 35 something, 40 years old. And so, we bought it with the pews. It's always been a church. We bought it with the pews in here and the altar and the cross on the wall. And I've taken apart all the pews, and we're repurposing the oak as shelving and countertops. And
wow,
yeah, I mean, it's a full on. So we have this little compound that's kind of in the middle of this small town, and we're about 40 minutes from the ocean, going west. And
is the plan to have do some workshops out there eventually, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think I'm not exactly sure if it'll be opened as what am I trying to say? It'll be more informal. I have a network of friends and people that I'm sure will end up doing that. I work with a group called the Nomadic School of Wonder from time to time, who actually I think that's how we know each other.
Yeah, that's how I found out about you. I heard about your project up at
Fogo.
Yeah.
Fogo Island in northern Canada.
Fogo Island, right.
Yeah, but it's a pretty big construction project now, so we're probably not ready for that. But yes, we will get to that point where
that is so cool.
The Airstream is already under a shade tree, and that's kind of the guest room. And we've already had plenty of friends come and just work in the ceramics studio.
Now, how is the town? You said there's 200 people. Are they how is the vibe for oh my God, you guys bought the church. We're so excited. You're artists. I mean, what's that like?
Yeah, well, a lot of people have asked that question, thinking that obviously Central California is a little more conservative than San Francisco or LA, and it's mostly agriculture people out here. But I kind of grew up in while it was a suburb of Kansas, it was the furthest south, and I've got plenty of family members that are farmers and conservative, blue collar type people, and I I'm not the type of person that I can get along with anyone, and I don't. While I have pretty strong, political beliefs, I don't hold it against other people. You know what I mean? I can kind of get along with others. Yeah. And but to answer your question, the church had its last service almost 1 year before they put it up for sale, and that service had, I think, 6 people, and those people were much older. And so, the church was just dying. I hate to say. Yeah. I'm not a religious person, but I believe people should be able to worship how they want to worship. But I'm sad that it happened. But it died kind of before we ever came into the picture.
Right.
So then it was for sale for a year, and I think that they were just happy that it wasn't. Most of the community members were happy that it wasn't becoming a tasting room or a bar, because there's a lot of vineyards around here, and they didn't want it to turn into a big bar scene in the middle of town in their church. There was talk of it becoming a community center, but they couldn't get the money together to make that all happen. I don't know the details of that, but somehow that didn't happen. And then there were maybe a few people, the older folks that stopped by, that still think that it's a little curious. But for the most part, everybody is super friendly, and they're happy that there's a young couple here that are revitalizing the property, because we're the Times Square of Shandon. It's the post office across the street, the city park, the school, and the church. We are, and nobody has mailboxes, so everybody comes to the post office to get their mail each day.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so that's basically everybody comes to our front yard and parks in the front, and you kind of just see people come and go in, and we've had an opportunity because of that to meet a lot of people that live around here. And I guess I'm rambling, but we've made friends. I wouldn't say that my favorite people in the world live in Shandon. It's we kind of keep to ourselves, but we've met some great people.
Yeah. How much land are you on? How much space do you have?
It's on a half an acre.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and we've got a big parking lot that technically isn't ours, but it's been the church parking lot for since horse and buggies were coming through here. And so the whole town just kind of assumes it's ours. And so I've done some projects in that, and people don't park out there. And it feels like we have a little bit more land than we do, but
Cool. That's so cool.
It's the greatest, man.
Yeah, no, I love that you're just going for it. I mean, it's just, it's amazing.
I won't say that I wasn't nervous. So, you're moving out to the middle of nowhere. I mean, it's not the middle of nowhere, but from downtown Los Angeles, it feels like it sometimes. But you kind of think like, I've worked really hard to get this career going and have contacts and people calling me to do things that I've always wanted to do. And now I'm just going to like move away from all that, But to be honest, it's still, it's the world has changed. A lot of it's COVID, a lot of it's Zoom, a lot of it's just the world we live in today. But I feel like I'm not as far away as I felt in the beginning. I do a lot of things with the Getty, and I thought they maybe wouldn't contact me anymore because I'd lived too far away and wanted to work with local artists. But I'm still doing those projects, and it's 3 hours. It's not that big of a deal to get into town, and you can get up to San Francisco quickly. It's not that far.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't think it would make much difference at all. If anything, it kind of makes you stand out because it's like that guy working in a church, it's like, where is that guy? Like it's a thing. And it's your life your life looks a lot more like your art now than it did before, probably,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And if I'm struggling with anything right now, it's finding the time to have all these new influences and new kind of feelings and influence my work, because I'm spending a lot of time as a construction worker here, which I'm happy to do because I've always wanted to build my own compound. And, we're not hiring a lot of tradespeople to do a lot of work. I'm perfectly capable of doing a certain amount of electrical, a certain amount of plumbing, the drywall, you know what I mean? It's not like I'm just out here with a clipboard hiring people. We're really doing it all ourselves. So, and I know it'll end, but the struggle right now is just, I've always been someone that works a lot on his artwork. I'm always piddling on something. I believe a good idea only comes while you're working on a bad idea. You can't just like sit around and watch Netflix all day and hope something's going to happen. But if you're ripping off a roof all morning, you come in and it's like, oh man, I just want to lay down and watch a movie. So it's a little bit harder to keep that energy going. That'll end, as soon as we get the Sunday school dialed in.
So when you're working on your own stuff, like I know you do some gallery shows, like how do you think around your own work when you're making it? Are you just like experimenting and then you get into a groove and find a bunch of things you want to chase? Or what is your own work like compared to the collaborative work?
I think that's right. What you said about finding some ideas you want to chase. I'm a guy that has a lot of tables set up where there's like little drawings going on here. There's a bigger drawing that I try to chip at a little bit every day, or at least a little bit every week. There's ceramics, small ceramics projects, and then a larger ceramics project, and I'm always just kind of piddling and working on different things until I've learned over 20 years, I guess, or 30 years of making to trust, the thing that I'm thinking about all the time, the thing that I wake up and like, what if I did, there'll always be a few days in a row where you're thinking about this, whatever it is. And I've just learned to kind of follow that. And I've made, it's a process. And so I can't say that the same is true with earlier work or, there are certain times where I was kind of going about it differently, but anymore, I've just learned that I am the type of artist that needs to just work with a lot of different materials, try a lot of different things, just go ahead, what am I trying to say? Like just do it, it's like a cheesy saying, but just keep on working and having faith that not all these things are going to work out, but one of these is going to lead to, it's just going to lead to the place that you need to be.
Yeah.
And also not being afraid to change it. Like if I feel really good about something, but just a conversation you and I have might spark me in some other direction. And then just being okay with the fact that these things can sit aside. And now I'm excited about this. I know there's a certain point where you really have to maybe pull it in. If you get a deadline, if you get a show. I was much more active in galleries. Maybe COVID killed a lot of things. Galleries were going out and people I was working with no longer were galleries. I still work with Paul Kopakin, who doesn't have a brick and mortar gallery anymore, but he still has, a great presence in the Los Angeles art scene.
Right.
And get work out there. I guess a lot of that comes from probably me just pursuing other things. I firmly believe that I just want to have a creative life. And while I want to have a gallery show someday soon, I'm sure I will. And I'm just kind of accumulating work now. I also want to be able to pursue commercial stuff and do the workshops. And I think sometimes some galleries that I've worked with in the past have not been so open as you and I are to that type of life. While they're great people, they are much more interested in artists that will always be giving them product, giving them stuff.
Yeah.
And if I get sidetracked on some big collaborative, thing that takes me for a month or so to get hacked out and worked out, then I want to be able to do that. And sometimes that hasn't worked out so well for different galleries I've worked with, but I just want to be me, I just want to do the things that make me feel the best. And when, while I'm not going to say it's not awesome to sell something to some rich guy or woman or whatever, some rich person that puts it in their house, but nobody ever gets to see that thing again. I'm not dissing the selling of work. I love selling work, but the feeling that I get from working really hard on something and then selling it at an art fair, you get the check, you get 50% or whatever, and it's great. But it nowhere even comes close to, the things we were talking about earlier in this conversation where you're
connecting with people, and there's that shared fire that happens with everyone riffing off of each other. I get it.
And a lot of times people you meet in those experiences end up buying work from you or end up becoming collectors of yours, in other ways. The art, I'm not the best person to have on a podcast talking about how the art world has changed in terms of commercially, but it really seems to have because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And maybe just the cycle of things, and also social media. All those things came together, I feel like, over the last 10 years and have really altered the landscape of what art galleries do for artists and how artists can work without galleries. And while I still value all those relationships, I don't know, I'm able to do commissions and people contact me, and I'm still interested in anybody that wants to help me get the message out, meaning help me, get work out to the world for a cut or whatever. But I'm also very good at, some artists, I guess, aren't good at getting back on emails or like making an invoice or, making things happen. I'm just able to, if you want to buy a piece, I'm able to make it happen for you, without like, oh my God, this guy's taking me away from my studio time.
Yeah, no, I get it. I am the same way. If a collector or someone who's bought something of mine or who's interested in my work, I'm really into seeing them. I'll have them come by the studio. These are the people that are making this all possible. It's collaborative. I love the fact that people are interested in, I'm just surprised, they track it. They watch what's happening. They remember a piece from a year ago. And
yeah, that's incredible when you get somebody that remembers some piece or something. You're just like, wow, man, I can't believe you remember that.
So are you just sharing your work on Instagram, or is that your main thing? You're just working and sharing, and pretty much that's your promotional model?
Yes.
So cool.
I'm not very savvy at it. I'm not this guy that understands hashtags and I don't have a huge following. It's only like maybe 7,000 or 8,000 people follow me on Instagram. But, I feel like the people that follow me really care about what I'm up to. And, would I like to be one of those guys that has, 50,000 people looking at what he's doing? Sure, that'd be great, but I don't know what it takes to do that. And I'm just like, I just want to live my life. The people that can connect with me and they know what I'm up to. And I don't know, I used to maybe care about that stuff a little bit more than I do now. I think a lot of it has to do with moving out here and kind of just coming onto a little bit different way of life and just being maybe a little older, or I don't know, I just feel more comfortable.
Do you find you have more time a little bit more now? You're out in the, there's no.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about what that's like.
I don't understand it because obviously we have the exact same amount of minutes, and I wasn't somebody that commuted too much because I've lived in my studios. I've always been unless I'm waking up at a girlfriend's or something, I'm able to just wake up and work until I'm tired and then go back in the back room and sleep. But I still feel like there's just more time here. I've become a little more of an early riser. So we get up with the roosters and stuff, and we go so I've walked the dogs. It's like 6:30, I'm 7, I'm walking in from already being on the dog walk, and there's not, I never had a studio where people were just stopping by constantly, but I did have, a lot more people popping in in LA than I do now.
Mm-hmm.
So that gives you a little more time because, you know, you're in the middle of something and then somebody pops in and then all of a sudden 3 or 4 hours have gone by and you're chatting with them and you go get lunch. And
yeah,
while that's fun, I don't know. I don't know exactly how I have more time here, but I feel like I have more time. And
that's so good.
And it's interesting that you say that because I've talked about it with Nadine, and we obviously don't have more time, but maybe I don't know what it is that I wasn't doing. A lot of it might be I was never a big foodie, but you go out to dinner, you go get some lunch, sometimes those things just take a little more time. There's not a restaurant or a gas station in Shandon, so it's more about like just I've always made food myself, but it's like we just do everything ourselves. And I don't know, man. Yeah. I'm rambling with that answer, but I definitely feel like I have more time to do what I'm doing, and it feels pretty good. It also just feels good to just be a little more in sync with nature. And while that sounds kind of maybe cheesy or a little bit nuts, living in LA, not only is it always 70, but it's just always green. And now we're at 1,000 feet here. While it doesn't get too far below freezing, it drops to like 30. You can have some like 28-degree mornings or whatever, and the leaves fall off the trees. And it's like back to the Midwest where the seasons were changing, and you could start each morning with a sweater. And I don't know, that doesn't go back to time, but it's just like just being able to slowly watch the seasons change. Or living in warehouses in LA, you don't see the flowers on the trees every day. I'm not watering plants every morning and watching these things grow. And there's something about that just having a yard to take care of.
Yeah, what a great chapter. I'm on the brink of like, I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but I want to consolidate everything in one place, so I'm not living and rent, and there's a lot of places I can do this, and it's a big move, so I really admire that you went for it and you did it, man. It's awesome.
Yeah. And we obviously don't have to get into numbers, but we got such a good deal on this place that, I think it's all going to be paid off in like a pretty quick, not too long,
Wow.
and then it'll just be my compound, my home base. I won't have to, I've just, man, living in LA, I've just been a slave to rent for so many years, wanting to own something, growing up in the Midwest, seeing friends with these like giant compounds and lakes in their backyard. And, you're like, what, dude? But you keep on scraping by and making it happen and saving. And so finally, now that I just have this little compound, I just want to get it paid off and then just continue.
Wow. Kyle, listen, man, I'm just super stoked to have been able to catch up, especially at this point, at this juncture. It's really inspiring, man. I really appreciate you taking time to share with us all you're making.
Oh, man, absolutely, Nick. It's my pleasure.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Art to Life show. If you enjoyed the podcast, please help me get the word out by sharing it with your friends on Instagram at @arttolife_world. The recording of this and all episodes, along with a place to leave comments, see additional photos, and discover a whole new approach to making art, can be found by going to arttolifepodcast.com. And secondly, if you could leave a rating and review in whatever app you're listening on today, I would super, super appreciate it. It makes a big difference. And last but not least, before you go, if you'd like to be on my artist list, every Sunday morning I send out a video blog all about art making. Go to arttolifepodcast.com to sign up. And all these links are in the show notes, of course. Thanks so much for being here, and we'll see you next week.